So figuring out how we can best function in higher education as those who teach, who have a passion for teaching, who want to be in the classroom, who want to interact with students, maybe even want to have office hours, the opportunities that AI presents, rather than just the challenges and the threats of AI, that's our job to embrace.
So what's the most common misconception students walk in with then?
Definitely thinking they're going to learn anything in class. I mean, in reality, the rate that technology changes, there's no curriculum that could possibly keep up anyway.
Right.
So what ends up happening is you learn everything from your peers and you make your lifelong best friends and your co-founders you meet. So it's all about the people, but they all think it's going to be about the classes, and it's not.
Right.
Hi, I'm James Callahan, and this is The Do-Over Show. And I have 20 plus years of experience in higher education, tenure track, adjunct, temporary work, 8 or 9 universities, public and private, grad and undergrad. I've been in a lot of different teaching contexts, and I've been through the shifts that have happened in higher education.
The Ministry of Magic has always considered the education of young witches and wizards to be of vital importance. Although each headmaster has brought something new to this historic school, progress for the sake of progress must be discouraged.
I can tell you that I've lived through the first digital divide. I was the first at my college to have a web-based desktop in my office, and I would spend an hour or more every single day learning it. It was a much more difficult circumstance. There were no tutorials or YouTube videos to figure out how to do all this. And the hard turn of learning how to embrace early technology meant that I had to find ways, and I did, of increasing my productivity.
What's a question no student has ever had the courage to ask you?
Actually, can I get someone else to do my work for me? Which is absolutely the right thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like a great builder and entrepreneur. It's like, if someone else can do something for you, why would you do it yourself?
Right.
But they're all taught, no, it's got to be your own work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually the wrong lesson.
Right.
So they're afraid to ask, but they should.
Now, one of the universities where I've been teaching for a long time, they have been very proactive, and one of the academic deans has been a champion of using AI across all fields. And of course, the tenured faculty and the endowed chairs that faculty occupy have all generally resisted this. And that is, it's been left up to the departments and even individual professors, and basically what they tell you is just read the syllabus, which means students send emails as they're signing up for courses, or they want to know, hey, does this prof allow the use of AI? And how much does this prof allow the use of AI? And they choose their courses based on that. That is, students are indicating the direction that they want to move. Now, what's interesting is that most of those in humanities or liberal arts discipline at the university where I teach as an adjunct, as well as at several other universities in the area, we talked, that they prohibited the use of AI or severely restricted the use of AI within humanities or liberal arts curriculum. That is, they don't want you to use it because they say it shortcuts the deliberative process. You're not learning how to interpret, how to deliberate, how to discern the difference between good or bad uses of knowledge. Knowledge is just data. It's just there. It's what you do with them that's the burden placed on us as teachers in higher education. How to use that data, that knowledge, in better ways. Ways that fit in the contemporary workplace. For me, I require the use of AI in my history and religious studies classes. Yep, you have to use AI. You don't have to use it to the same extent as everyone else uses it. That is, with some STEM familiar students or those who are a little more adept at AI, they build agents to administer not only their coursework, but reverse engineer their schedules. And this is what's critical. Most of us, we handle semesters completely backwards. That is, we don't work backwards from the final to today and account for how much time it will take for different exams, timing, even reading. No, what I require is simply what will be required of students as they enter the workplace. That is, they're going to be required to use and have the tools of AI available to them in just about any job they take, except one that has the prompt, would you like fries with this? You see, every career that's available to young adults today, every career does or will soon embed AI in its daily work product, its management, and an AI scoring system. That is, how adept, with same thing, keystroke monitoring, it will figure out how much you're using it. Now, sometimes it's by the token spent, sometimes it's simply by the work productivity compared to others if you're doing similar work across a team. that people will know how adept you are using AI, and that will become a tool of your advancement or your education in in the workplace, where you got to get more AI literate. You see, and in the professions today, the professions with upward development and mobility and income, all of them, law, medicine, healthcare, accounting, they all require business development, entrepreneurship, they all require the adept use of AI tools for the benefit of your work product. Always with human in the loop, HITL, that is always involved with humans making that final evaluation, the deliberative, discerning process of this is good or this is slop. That awareness is required. So there is some knowledge and the application of knowledge back to our role in higher education. But what's considered cheating in higher education is often what's required to function well in the workplace. Let me give you an example. Open book, open note preparation and presentations are ordinary in the workplace. They're for the most part prohibited in higher ed. Using any and all available tools in real time in research. Knowing and analyzing the competition's work product. Borrowing or copying good ideas, even without attribution or just an illusion. And take-home exams and all work product happen on the student schedule, on the worker schedule, that is, on the boss's schedule. That is, they happen in real time, not in the contrived setting of a Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. in classroom 104 during exam week. And by the way, a boss is never going to show up for a Tuesday morning meeting at 8 a.m. and instruct everybody on the team to take out a clean sheet of paper because we're going to have a pop quiz today. And in a recent study in higher education, here's the embarrassing thing for traditional four-year colleges or universities. It's the community colleges and two-year schools and certificate and apprenticeship-based programs that are much more engaged with the use of AI, in part because they are more engaged with interacting with the business community, the local business community, and the demands of the local business community. Okay, some of the numbers. About half of the people that major in a thing actually spend any time during their work career doing the things that they majored in. That is, transferable skills and those capacities as a learner are much more important to employers than whether or not you have specific knowledge. Not in STEM, not in science fields, I get it, but in most fields, which is most of employment, the people who find jobs or careers within that field have transferable skills and they're able to function. They did something difficult and they finished it. That's what an employer is looking for. They're able to work together on a team and contribute using their skills and abilities to add value to their job, not simply to do a job. Again, that's what a humanities and liberal arts program is supposed to be focused on, that is developing skills and capacities, not simply holding knowledge about Columbus sailing the ocean blue. Ooh, we can't talk about Columbus anymore. You know what I mean. That is the very question students should be asking. They're prohibited or they're afraid to ask in higher education, and that is, can I use AI to do this task for me? And let's be real, most of the way we and students are using AI currently is not generative AI. We may benefit from it, but most of us aren't sitting around building apps and agents to do our work or manage workflow. Most of us are using AI like Super Google or Google on steroids or Ph.D. in a box or whatever you want to call it. And that is, it's basically an interactive Wikipedia. And we've already had that fight with Wikipedia and lost. By the way, I require my students to use Wikipedia because when they go to a class with Dr. Callahan and they tell their mom, who's concerned about them and paying a lot of money for their higher education, what classes are you taking? Oh, I have this class with Callahan. Oh, really? What did you learn? Well, we talked about, I don't know. We talked about the Salem witch trials. Fantastic. Mom, if she cares, if she wants to show up for her kid, if she wants to show any interest in the kid, is going to Google Salem witch trials. And guess what she's going to come up with? The Wikipedia article on the Salem witch trials. And by the way, how many reasons, just try this. Just put in to Google, just search for, why did the Salem witch trials happen? And then go into AI mode and see how many different answers are available. How are we supposed to figure out the difference? How are we supposed to figure out which one is probably right and which one is a little bit off? There are thousands and thousands of books on the topic. There are dozens of explanations of why it happened. And figuring out how to use that material, that's what I do in real time in the classroom. So we get to the late 17th century in Salem, Massachusetts, and we go for it. We put it up on the screen, and I show them in real time. Why did they happen? Let's look at the answers. And we go through them in real time to discern what is a good answer, what resources or sources do they use to come up with this, what's the data that they're using, and what are they trying to say because of this. That is, I show them how in real time, and I use AI tools, platforms, projected, smart room, on the screen, and we go through it together. Now, I also require students to use AI as they go through and they do reading, especially if they're in a class where the class is a required class, not something they would have chosen. And we have an assigned textbook. So I asked them, look, you're never going to look at this book again, but you have to use it for this course. It's our shared knowledge. So I want you to figure out, ask AI, why was this book written? And give me a 50-word summary of this book. And then for each of the reading assignments, they're supposed to go through chapter 1. Give me a summary of chapter 1 and give me 3 discussion questions based on the material in chapter 1. And then you bring those to class and we interact with those questions, what kind of questions were suggested, and we see whether or not AI is giving us different answers, what prompts yield different responses. And we actually go through the discussion questions and we have those conversations. That is, we use the class material and we apply AI as a tool, as a learning mechanism, so that we can figure out the better use of data. Now, the other thing I do is I ask them to pick a book on their own. They get to choose it on a subject in the field that we're talking about, history or religion, and they have to give basically a review of the book, not a 6th grade review, chapter 1, chapter 2, but actually a 1-page summary, and then they have to interact with one of the deeper subjects mentioned in the book. And I ask them to use AI to evaluate the book, pick out which topics are important, why was this book written. By the way, you figure out why a book was written and you'll know more than just about anybody else about the book. You'll know if it's a required textbook, why the prof picked it. Sometimes it's because the prof gets a royalty. Other times it's because the book argued this and that's what the prof agrees with as opposed to that. And you'll know that if you ask the simple question of AI, why was this book written? And by the way, every book actually tells us, we've just never paid attention to it. Now, in the classroom, that's how I function, and I do it live and interactive. With exams, take home, use AI. But you're restricting your material to the course work presented in class and our discussions, the PowerPoints that we use to guide us through the discussions that I prepared and shared with students on the LMS, and the textbook, and that's it. They're supposed to limit it to that. So they are taught to use those shared resources and answer 4 or 5 questions out of 8 or 10 options, submit them in essay form, and they have to include as like a bibliography what sources they use, what platform they use in coming up, what AI platform they use in coming up and producing these responses. And then you can use that as a way of measuring whether or not they're applying a tool in the development of discernment in the learning process in a humanities course. You're welcome. If you teach a course that's a major or prerequisite to another course, then let's admit it, you're teaching for the test. That's it. You're teaching for the test. You got to get them from here to there successfully. And that's your goal. Whatever it takes to do that, that is your job as a professor, whether you're tenured or adjunct, especially if you're adjunct. Because if you teach students who aren't prepared for the next sequence, you will not be invited back to teach that course as a prereq for another sequence course. Your goal is to teach for the test. Get over yourself and all of your idiosyncrasies and all your unique knowledge or theories about why something happened and teach for the damn test, because that is your success as a professor. Now that means that in a lot of settings, AI can replace prerequisites. That is, you can be through a modular course that an AI administered and evaluated, and AI used for scoring that is evaluating material or content that you submit for evaluation. And that course can be created as an app or an agent by a savvy school in order to eliminate the labor associated with a prerequisite, which, by the way, is one of the chief explanations for if you change your major, you're going to become a 5 or a 6-year senior. You know that. So if you get a prerequisite in a sequence of courses, you can shorten that time by having students take modular courses administered by AI as the prerequisite to prep them for an in-person class or interaction with a professor in the major of the school that's required in attendance in order to fulfill the requirements for that major. That's where AI is going to be used in higher education. One final note, I realize that AI literacy or AI readiness is not necessarily in my scope of work, but in seeing students prepared for genuine careers and work, And learning tools in my AI-friendly or AI-facing approach to humanities teaching helps them in their interaction in other classes. Even if AI is prohibited, they've learned the skills of discernment and what slop is, and the use of not just knowledge, but how the knowledge can be applied or used. And they build a capacity, they build a skill set. And that is what people think will be eliminated in the use of AI, and that is that people will be taught they don't have to think instead of teaching how to think about important subjects. That's the direction that AI is moving higher education, which will mean the elimination of certain jobs, not necessarily the elimination of careers. The difference is with your real experience in using knowledge as a professor, as an instructor, as an adjunct. What was required of us to earn a Ph.D. is different than what is required of us to impart or have context for students in higher education. And knowing the difference between how we learned in our Ph.D. and how students are to learn within the courses we are teaching them, that is something we've lost sight of. And too many of us approach the classroom as though we're trying to replicate our experience in our Ph.D. program, in our seminars, in our lectures, in our interactions. That is not undergraduate life. It never was, but we got away with it for years because we were the smartest ones in the room. The smartest one in their classroom is what they're able to access on the AI platform on their laptop or their smartphone in class in real time. I'll give you an example. So I was making a 5 short minutes presentation on a topic in a history setting, in a history course. And a student on their laptop asked for an evaluation of a line that I used in my presentation and said, "Hey, Dr. Callahan, what about," and asked me something. And I said, "That is fantastic. How did you come up with that?" No one else came up with that, but the student took the initiative and asked the prompt, got an AI response, and said, "Here is another take on it," or "Here's what's being said." And they were able to provide, the student was able to provide, because I prompted them. Here's my prompt to the student. Tell me how you came up with that. What was the prompt? What platform did you use? And let's talk about the alternative. Let's talk about what's being said. And it gave this moment in which there was an engagement with the material, not simply in a reception of knowledge that I had and they didn't have. It was absolutely fantastic. Hey, and thanks for being part of the Do-Over Show. Could you please tap the like button? And while you're down there, how about you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. I'm so glad I found you and you found me. Thanks.